What's up, guys? Pittsburgh Weichwartz back again with yet another deck tech. I'm joined today by Brian.
Hello, hello.
And we are going to run through Bofuri 8 book. So I personally did a lot of testing with Bofuri. I know Tyler also put in some time with Bofuri as well. So you probably played into it quite a bit, Brian.
A ton, yeah, but I haven't played that myself.
Yeah, so we're going to run down 8 book. If you follow the Japanese competitive scene at all, you've probably seen this deck popularized by Milk Tea, an extremely good, very well-written Weichwartz player. We'll have his original article on this deck archetype, in the description, and even through Google Translate. I implore you guys to all check it out. Give him a look. Give him a follow on Twitter. Support him if you'd like. His articles are really good, again, even through Google Translate. He has really good explanations on why he runs specific cards, why he doesn't. So more on 8 book itself. So you're going to look at this deck, and it's probably going to make some people sort of like tilt their heads a little bit. It's definitely not the cards you expected to see play in Bofuri at all. It's a lot more vanilla than you might see, and unfortunately, sometimes that is just how everything falls with certain sets. Sometimes the things that look the best don't end up playing out the best because of the other cards in the set, sort of the support, kind of that glue that every set has available. So without further ado, let's show the actual deck list. If you're just here for the deck list, definitely leave a like on the way out. That really helps us out. But as you can see here, it is very directed, not a lot of one-ofs at all. We just got 3 here. Very directed playstyle, going from level 0 into level 1 into level 3. We are proudly monocolor. We are mono blue 8 book, as we said before, using the Trial Deck Sally combo and the Kanade level 1, which are both like fairly non-interactive. Well, you got a restander. I guess people would consider restander fairly interactive finishing combo, but it is meant to be extremely consistent and tuned to beat the current meta where things are either walling or being relatively non-interactive themselves. So we're going to get right into the deck list. We're going to start out with the Is Ricky. Don't think we need to get into why Rickies are good. This helps us sculpt for our level 1. It helps us tri-field. This one, when our other characters get reverses, this card gets an additional 1,000 power, so it can possibly swing in at 3-5, which for a Ricky is pretty good. Makes it so that we're winning board with our other lanes with our chunkier cards. We're using some of our supports to win over lanes. This will also be able to win lanes, so we leave damage buffers going into level 1. We are notably a deck that would rather reach level 1 second because our cards can get pretty big. We have like rolling power going, so we're free to sort of slam this down, sculpt for our level 1, tri-field, do whatever we need to do. We have like some Climax assurance tools in the deck, which we'll get into in a little bit. Help us get into our Climax as well with this card. We can like Ricky for our Frederica Kome. We don't have our Climax to sort of like get into a Climax that we can, or any Climax, so we can use our other Climax swapper to sort of get in there. So definitely a super good card in the deck. We want to play 4 because we want to see it every single game, because like I said, we do not care if we hit level 1 first or second. We're not really kind of playing that game. We're pretty non-interactive 0 to 1. We just do what we can to sort of get there and make sure we're sculpting for level 1. So definitely a super solid card, and we run 4 copies. Moving on to our main field plus, we got this guy. I don't even remember his name. I think it's Shu. Yeah, he's the guy with the knives. Yeah. So he is a 3,500 level 0, so he's already oversized. Gives all your characters can't side attacks, so make sure you keep that in mind. And then he is a chaser, so at the start of your opponent's attack phase, he can run in front of something else. So what this lets us do is basically confirm our second level 1 turn if we go first when we play this down, which is why we're playing 4 copies. We want to open this card every single game. So if we go first, even if this card would lose its lane, we can make sure that we run in front of one of our opponent's other characters to increase the chance that they don't trigger something and send us to level 1 too early. It gets us that second level 1 turn to make sure that we can play down our Izriki and then get whatever we need and make sure we're set for level 1. So super versatile card. With one of our other cards, one of our brainstorms that we have to play, this could sit at 4,500 in the center and then run to 35 on the sides, which is pretty impressive. 3,500 chaser, even if your opponent inside it, is still fine, because the main thing here is we're worried about the damage economy, so much, not so much actually forcing our opponent to like burn their cards like Goblin Slayer. We just want to make sure we get that extra level 1 turn. So very good card for that kind of deck. Just ensuring we get as many turns at level 0 as we can by running in front of other cards.
And that's felt all right, even without the level or side attack denial that like the Goblin Slayer Chaser has.
Yeah, as long as you're throttling your opponent's damage, this card is doing its job. That's what's most important. As long as he's throttling damage, making sure you're getting a better chance to get a second level 1 turn, he is doing his job. He is controlling the board. Made even better again by the Me Brainstormer, which we also play, because he'll be at 4,500 if he's in the center. So he's kind of just a better version of that Maple you see some people play that sits 4K on your opponent's turn, where your opponent somehow always outs that card. Well, this lives more often than that card sometimes. So just a far more versatile card opening it going first, stuff like that. So we got good first and going second play as well, because it's probably big enough to beat over your opponent's card as well. All right, moving on. We're running 2 Brainstormers in the deck. We are 8 books, so we get to run this one. We got this Kanade. So it's got the Married Life effect. When you play any Climax, give one of your characters 1,000 power. This is going to be relevant. It's like always a good effect to have. Make sure that you can get over stuff between the level 0 and level 1 if you're slamming Climax or something like that. Even into level 2 and level 3, just gives you, additional instances of power. And it is a 6-card Brainstorm, extremely good for getting through our first deck. That is a lot of cards for a self-rest Brainstorm. Only hits on book triggers and only salvages 1, no matter how many book triggers you reveal. But still, knowing what your deck state is, and you run that ratio real quick, and it's like, okay, well, like 4 has a lower chance to hit, but 6 is almost guaranteed. I mill for 6, and I get that 1. If I mill more than 1, well, that's just a low roll. But choosing between this and a more traditional Brainstorm, we can use the one that gives us the best chance to hit, no matter where we are in the game. So we're running 3 of this one, and then we'll run 2 of the other one, which I'll touch on briefly after this. But it gives us good first deck speed, combined with our other deck speed tools. We're always going to be on top of it, and we can sort of guarantee a salvage. We have a lot that's really important that this card is salvaged. We have a lot of cards that we want to recur after they die or stuff like that on the swing back that we want to get back and possibly play again. So the fact that we can practically guarantee a single salvage to be able to do those disruptive effects another turn is really, really good, and that's why we run the card. Milk Tea touches on this a lot in this article, so definitely check that out if you want to see more reasons why this card is so good. But it's basically the deck speed is the TLDR on that. It's the deck speed and the fact that you get to choose between 6 and 4 when you're examining what kind of Brainstorm will hit is just really, really valuable for long tournament consistency, which is what this deck was built for. This deck was built for going into longer tournament events where you're expected to play against a lot of random stuff for a long time across a lot of different rounds. So it's very generalized, a little bit more vanilla, but very consistent, and that is the goal here. So moving on to the me Brainstorm, when we're really compressed, we don't want to mill 6 when 4 is going to hit, and we want to keep that option open to maybe get multiple pluses for our 1 stock. We're going to run 2 of this. The original list was running a 4-1 split, but I opted for 3-2. Seemed better just for keeping those options open, especially because it has this first effect where other level 0 in front row gains 1,000 power. So it makes our Chaser, our Knife Guy Chaser of 45, makes our other cards randomly oversized, like the Kome or the Climax Whopper, which we'll get to right after this, 35 and 4K respectively. Just a really good card when we open it early, and then a good card to pick up later for our second deck. So we typically don't use this Brainstorm effect on first deck because first deck Brainstorms are always just like random unless you've not seen any Climaxes until you're late level 1. But definitely going to include for your second deck and forward, and also a salvage Brainstorm. So the only thing you're thinking about here is whether you want to mill 4 or 6, because typically your back row is going to be 2 of these. We don't run any assists or anything like that. It is just these 2 Brainstorms, what you're trying to get down.
It's always 2. There's nothing else you want in the back row in this deck. It's just always
Brainstorm. Never. Okay. Always Brainstorms. So very simple. And they always have weirdly relevant power effect. This one is good early and the other one is good all game, so it doesn't really matter. Moving on, we got the Frederica Kome. So it's an on reverse Kome. So when it becomes reverse in battle, you look at up to top 3 of the cards cards from your deck. Choose any Climax from among them, add it to your hand, and then ditch any card. And that's only if you add a card. So if you just mill 3 clean cards, you don't have to ditch anything like a normal Rize or anything like that. So it's just free mill on your first deck, and you can possibly crash this in later to maybe try to get a Climax to confirm your finisher, because one of the big things of Bofuri, it doesn't have good access to top check effects, whether it's top check 3, draw 2, ditch 1, or top check X. Those effects aren't very good or very available in Bofuri in most builds, so we have to sort of create Climax assurance in other ways, and this is the one way we do that. So say after our mulligan and after our opening draws on our first level 1 turn, we don't draw our Climax, and then we draw up on our second level 1 turn after we've used our Chaser when we're going for our Ricky play, and we still haven't got our Climax. So what we can do is we can use our Is Ricky to get this card, play this card out, our opponent runs over it, and then we try to mill into our level 1 Climax. And even if we don't get into our level 1 Climax, we at least milled 3 cards on our first deck. So it's really good all around when you use that play pattern, but it can be pretty underwhelming when you don't use it in that play pattern. This is a card that you use only when you happen to not get a Climax in your opening mulligan in some way. If you're whiffing Climax, this is what you use to sort of have that little bit of Climax assurance to make sure you can get into your combo. A lot of decks just don't even have effects like this, so the strength is pretty self-explanatory. You got to be careful using this effect later, like going into your finish returns and stuff like that. Try to get Climaxes. That can be pretty greedy because you really don't want to mill into your deck and you don't want to decompress yourself. But if you have the option to do it and it's pretty safe to do it, maybe you choose to do so. That is all deck state and game state dependent, but it is a good tool to have. And it's also just a 2500, so it's just like can be pretty beefy in front of your me brainstorm and stuff. So totally decent card. Moving on, we have the Climax Swapper, and this is a good one. So this card can't side attack, and it's a 3k. It's level 0. Forget this is this Mai or Yui?
That's Yui, I think.
Yui's the white one, and Mai is the black and green one.
I believe so.
Yui is white and pink. Okay. And then she is a pay 1, ditch a Climax, salvage a Climax. So she's a Climax Swapper. We play 2 of it. It's like our 5th and 6th starter, as well as our additional Climax Assurance card, which is like really, really good. Like we always have like decent going first plays, and then we have the Ricky to follow it up with on our second level 1 turn. So just really, really strong profile. The fact that it's like an oversize and a Climax Swapper. So we don't feel bad about running 2 of it, even though it's like off color and whatever. We just slam it in the deck. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's got good synergy with the Kome too that we just looked at.
Mm-hmm.
Turns whatever Climax you take into whatever Climax you need at any point in the game.
Yeah, and again, like Bofuri is so hard up for these top check effects that these cards kind of become necessary evils that you have to play if you want to make sure you get into your climaxes at all. Because you're going to have games where you just don't, where it just doesn't happen. But yeah, pretty simple, very strong card, additional starter, and climax swap. Very good. Moving on to some auxiliary cards, we have the Trial Deck Maple. It is a double filter here. It is an on-play, discard a climax, salvage. So books can clog. We all know the classic meme of I love to read, books draw more books. This helps deal with that because you are, like memes aside, you are having additional draws. You're increasing the chance that you draw into 9 non-climax cards or additional climaxes and stuff like that. So it does help mitigate those issues where you're clogged, give you a selective salvage, which is always good. And it has an additional effect, what these cards typically don't have, is on death, pay 2 salvage. So you get to play this card, ditch a climax, swing, and then when it dies, if you triggered a climax, like 2 down or something like that, pay 2 salvage, pay that climax out, and get another additional salvage. So possibly 2 selective salvages on 1 card. Very, very strong consistency tool. Only one of, because, you know, we're not running like bar or pants or something like that, like something where the climax coming into our hand is guaranteed, but it is a good consistency card nonetheless. Moving on, one more filter. We got the on-play Rico Maple. So on play, you discard a card, then reveal top, and then you salvage a level X or lower character depending on the level of the card you revealed. So it's more selective than a normal costless filter, but you are coin flipping. You do run like a decent amount of zeros, but also a decent amount of level 1, stuff like that, because you're running events. So this can help you get extra additional copies of your level 1 or maybe auxiliary cards or stuff like that. And again, we do have cards we want to recur, so the fact that this is a salvage for potentially, you know, level 1 or something like that, those are all the cards that we want to get back. And you can at least, if you whiff, pick up Climax Swappers or Komes or Brainstorms or something like that. So
exactly.
Yeah, you have good high value cards at level 0 that you want to add back, that you want to have chill in hand. So it's always decent no matter what. Moving on here to the level 1, we have the level 1 Kanade. So this is kind of like the Sachi from Gasaya. Familiar with that. And if you're not familiar with JP format, you're watching this for English, it's kind of similar to Goblin Slayer, but instead of Goblin Slayer being on attack to go get to this event, Kanade is when you play the book. So when you play the book, as long as it's in your front row and you have another character, you get to either search or salvage for spell stash, which is a 1-0 camera event, which is check top 4, add any character, the event goes to discard. And then on attack, it pumps any character, including himself, 1500 power. So what you can do with this card when fielded in multiples is you can slowly roll that power, attacking into your opponent's chump lane first, and then rolling that power and ensuring you get over other lanes. So you can pump a lot of power starting at level 1, no matter where, no matter what your opponent has down, to just sort of make sure you win field on your turn, because that's all you're trying to do. You just want to make sure your opponent loses those cards so that they have to play additional cards from their hand and refill their field. And you don't need the Climax combo to get that extra power. So he's always like a give 1500 power anywhere. So he's like pretty good even when he's fielded without the Climax combo. So all in all, decent combo. We're just playing this because it adds a deck control tool. It adds a card. We have a way to use a card. Doesn't have to be a character. We have a way to generate value from just having an extra card. So it doesn't matter that that card might not be something we always want to play, because you don't always want to play camera events. Sometimes your deck is good and you don't want to mill into it. But we have ways that we can get value off just having a card in hand rather than it being a character or something like that. So the event is good enough. We just need that non-interactive plus, and the rolling power is really good. So moving on here, we have probably the best card in Bofuri. So this is a level downer. So this Maple and Sally. When you on play, you discard any card, keeping with that theme, like I said, of ditching any card, getting value off any card. Choose one of your opponent's level 1 or higher characters, and then your opponent has to choose a character 1 level lower than that or lower and put it onto the field in that slot. If you're not familiar with level down, like My Little Shooter, stuff like that, that does kick encore and stuff like that, so you can't level down your opponent's Shizu or something. They can just hand encore it. But what this does is it lets us like fuck with standby boards. It lets us beat over things that we wouldn't be able to beat over. It lets us screw with our opponent. It lets us get value off those added cameras that we do not want to play. So it just helps us continually win board on our turn over and over and over again, and helps us deal with our opponents like giant threats. Like against something like ReZero that's playing a lot of like big 14k walls that you can't beat over and stuff like that. You just level down it, and you know they sent that other stuff to memory, so they probably don't even have a 2-1 puck to put down. So they put down something else, you run it over. They might play another one if they can still meet condition, but you know, you just recur that every turn because we're a salvage deck. We like pull back this card, we play like a copy every turn until our opponent just wants to tear their hair out. Because this card is a character, we can get this card back no matter what, because we choose whatever brainstorm more reliably gets this card back. If we use the me and we +2, we get this back and we get a card to fuel it. If we don't think we're going to hit with 4, we do the 6 card brainstorm, we get this back, and we can ditch one of our cameras that we don't want to play. So it lets us constantly recur this card over and over and over again in the matchups when it's relevant, which is why we're only playing 2. I said this card's really important, but it seems weird that we're only playing 2, but level down is still an edge casey kind of effect, so you're only going to recur it in those matchups where it's really relevant. But definitely the strongest card in Bofuri, I think.
Yeah, this is absolutely a card that I've played into a ton, and when it's strong, it's extraordinarily strong. The fact that this already very powerful effect is stapled to a character which can be searched out by any number of other cards and accessed at a moment's notice to just ruin your board that you worked so hard to construct.
Yeah, it just removes it.
Mm-hmm.
Notably, you cannot use this your effect if your opponent doesn't have a waiting room. They have to have a character level lower, right, or you can't resolve the effect. So regardless of how it's worded on Heart of the Cards, that'll be more obvious when this card's worded in English. Moving on, we got this Obro, not an Obro Climax combo, but the fucking little dog thing. It's a Shimakai, 500 times your other characters, so it gives something 2k. Keeping in theme with winning board on our turn, and also this is just the best auxiliary, the best like other non, like Edge Casey level 0. It's just like always good. It's like a 105k. We can pump it with our other effects, and then it pumps over our other lane. So it just has good synergy with what our deck's trying to do, which is win board on our turn, while also just being like an acceptable auxiliary level 1 card, which is why it's in the deck. Because again, we're mono blue here, so we're kind of locked into just the blue card. Last card at level 1, just the 1/1 Adachi. We have things that are just too big that maybe have hand-on core and stuff like that, playing into matchups like Slime and whatnot. This card is around specifically for those matchups. The things that we can't level down, the things with hand-on core, the 2/2s with hand-on core, something like that. If we get an extra turn at level 1, we salvage this, because we always have that big toolbox going, because we can mill our deck and then brainstorm or do whatever we need to do to get the cards we need, and then play this and just beat our opponent's card to the bottom deck. So just a one of. You have better access to it than you'd think, because all your salvages and stuff are selective, and you have a pretty high chance to get a level 1 or lower with your Rico and whatnot. So you can get into this card when you need it, or sculpt for it because it's a level 1. You could even Ricky for it if you had to. So it's in the deck just for that insurance, just for those matchups. Like I said, this card, the camera, we don't always want to play it, but we have a lot of ways to get value off a card. But this is a good deck control tool. Because we can get it back from either zone, we can play it to possibly get into additional copies of Kanade and then get it back. We can rip it from deck, we rip it from anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. And you can't with the condition, because you can always look at your grave first, see if you have it, and then decide if you want to search for salvage. So yeah, as your grave's always public information. So you can't whiff it unless it's in clock. They're all in clock or they're all in stock. So as long as you keep track of where those ones are in clock or stock, you'll be fine. And like I said, we have a way to get value off this card, even when we don't want to play it from hand, like with this card. So this is the Egyptian God card in the deck. It's this chibi maple, this monstrosity, this demon. So this 2/1 maple, it's a 2/1/7k. On attack, if you have a 4 more character board, if your board is full, so you have to have all 5 characters on board, you give any character on attack 2 soul. And then during your opponent's turn, kind of like that 2/1 puck from ReZero, when this becomes reversed, you can discard any card, so errant books or the camera events that we don't want to play maybe. You rest this, and you keep it around for another turn. So you keep this like giant soul beater that helps you like side over standby, pushing damage, making sure you're putting your opponent like that level 3 sweet spot to kill with your finishers and stuff like that. It gives you insane soul modulation, which really helps your restander. Restanders without soul modulation are just straight up garbage because you're just swinging for randoms. With soul modulation, even over level 3s, you can like front for 3, side for 2, things like that. It gives you much better numbers, gives you a lot better options and stuff like that. We always want to play this card in every single game. This is a card where when you draw it, you'll hold on to it. You always want to play a copy. The general play pattern is you put put this down, you side over something with it to like get that exact damage because your opponent's probably compressed at that point. Then you get some damage through, your opponent kills it, then you field encore it, and then you use it to modulate with your combo the next turn. And then it doesn't really reverse and forces your opponent to overswing. So it's definitely a really, really cool card. This card is super, super slept on. It's another card that Milk Tea talks about in his article. So definitely check that out for information and different play patterns that you could use this card. This card's super, super insane.
Yeah, I wasn't aware this card existed, but it seems really dumb.
Yeah. This card's extremely, extremely good. It's more just like how it works with the deck and how it works with the restander, because you're a very non-interactive, sort of just do my own thing kind of deck.
Yeah.
And this just kind of helps you ignore the decks that are tanking. You're just like, oh, well, like, I'm not going to attack at all. Like, whatever. Get out of here. Level down another lane, side over another. Just you keep recurring these kinds of cards. If you get additional level 2 turns, you salvage this, you just keep playing it. Doesn't matter. This card comes down every turn, no matter what. Just keep it around.
Yeah, it seems pretty good.
Moving on to our level 3s, we have the Sally Finisher. This is from the trial deck. You will need to get 2 trial decks to get a full playset of this card. You get 4 of the Climax, but you only get 2 of the Sally, so you'll have to get 2 trial decks or single out this card. This is an on-play heal. When it attacks, it gets 1500 power, and it's a restander, so you're going to be able to get up to an additional 3k power. With the Climax, you're going to swing at 13-5 on your final attack. Then it has end of attack, doesn't need to get a reverse or anything. Pay 2, ditch any 2 cards, so works with our Climaxes that we end up drawing off our triggers, works with our extra events if we still have them in hand or something like that. So ditch any 2 cards, pay 2, ditch 2, and then at the end of the attack, you just stand back up. So you're going to use this in combination with your 2/1 Maple to set up exact numbers. Restanders are only good when you have access to this kind of soul manipulation. Without soul manipulation, I am a very firm opinion that restanders are almost completely unplayable when they don't have other effects. They are too vanilla. They are too, susceptible to things like money counter, things like memory kick counter. Thankfully, this is end of attack. It doesn't have to go for a reverse, so your opponent might be de-incentivized from doing things like that, but even then, they're still susceptible to this kinds of cards. So you have to have that ability to maybe like pump the soul, then side, then go for the front at the end or something like that, or do another side again or things like that if they don't have a level 3 down, because that soul sticks. People have to remember that when you restand into open lanes or you restand and do repeated sides, that negative or positive soul does stick into your next attack. So by exploiting that, you can get some attacks for very precise numbers and make sure that you're always swinging for exact lethal to close out the game. And if you're not ready to kill him, this card heals, so it helps you dirtle, and it swings in at 11k. So it can typically clear a lane even if you are forced to field it with that Climax. So it doesn't feel too bad. For our early play options, we are just playing this Kanade. He is unbelievably vanilla. He is a 4 or more healer that swings in for 11k on the first turn he's played, and then he is a 9k for every other turn after. He is blue, and he is a heal with a good early play condition, and that is it. Otherwise, this card is ass. This card is not good. Yeah, he is. That's a healer. That is literally the card. You play him because he is a big healer on turn, and that is it. And a completely unremarkable card, but you play it anyway because it fits into your non-interactive game plan.
Early play condition's fine.
Yeah,
one of the better ones. So it's fine.
Yeah, it's just fine. That's all it is. Last card in the deck here, the Climax combo effect is Flavor Text. We do not play the Climax, but this is on play, pay 1 stock swap. Even though this is not an effect that we will typically use a lot of the time, it is important to have access to this kind of card so that your opponent cannot disrespect you and keep a mountain of stock, especially when you have a restander. So if you have a restander finisher and your opponent crashes out their board on your finisher turn, they are basically saying, I am too compressed for you to ever kill me. And a lot of the times that's true. So you need to have this card to force your opponent to either pay out stock or play in such a way that they are not hyper compressed or sitting on mountains of stock, because you're showing them that that is an option available to you. And you mill so many cards, you put so many cards in grave, your opponent sees a lot of them the way the deck works. They're going to see that you have access to this card and they're going to start playing around it. Or, they're going to see you take it and stuff like that. So it's an important card to have access to because you don't have an out to those situations in the deck otherwise. So even though you're rarely going to use this effect, it's important that you have access to it. So that's why we run 1 copy. And it's consistent enough in the games that you need it. So
yeah, you just take it and hold it when you in the games where you do need it. Otherwise,
yeah, those stock rich games, where you both had a lot of turns, a lot of cancels, these are important cards to have. Because if your opponent has, more stock than they have in deck, or they're close to it, you can rip those cards out and get a free point of damage and things like that. Those are where stock swaps are good. Last cards, 8 books. for 4 level 1s and 4 level 2s, or level 3. That's it. And here's the deck again. Like I said, very directed, very lean. Not a lot of 1-ofs, only 3 or 4 here. And just very hyper consistent. We want to do the same thing every single game. We want to make sure we can recur our disruption cards like Level Down, things like that. We want to make sure we have access to those every single turn. This deck is a lot more vanilla, and because it's a lot more vanilla, it is a lot easier to pilot if you are someone who is new at White Schwartz and you're just dipping into a more competitive sort of mindset. I highly recommend this deck. It is, when I say it is more like easier to pilot, I don't mean to say that it's not difficult. I mean to say it's more straightforward. Your game plan is a lot more simplified of what you're trying to do because you don't care so much about your opponent. It's just like, oh, I want to win board on my turn, and I want to amass resources to restand, and I want to modulate the soul on my restander to try to swing for exact numbers. And you just sort of play the game. You have all the tools. It's just you got to make sure you know how to use them. Stay on top of your deck state. You have a lot of tools to keep on top of your deck state. Make sure you hit brainstorms. You have the selection where you need it, even though you're only adding that one card. It helps you learn how to sort of use those mill 4 events because you don't have to mill all 4. You can stop at any time. So teaches you that kind of stuff. Same sort of things that we say Mogros help teach people when they're learning, those kinds of effects. This is definitely a great deck to pick up, and it's probably going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than a lot of Bofuri decks on release. Your only heavy hitter double R in this deck is the Izriki. I don't suspect the Kanade early play will be very expensive. I don't suspect the Kome to be very expensive either because people are pretty down on that timing. So you only have to pick up this one playset of Izrikis, and everything else in the deck is probably going to be pretty cheap. But if you're looking for a great entry into like the competitive White Schwartz space and you don't want to spend a lot of money and you like Bofuri, this is a great deck to start out with. And I'm going to be completely honest right here, Brian. I have played a lot of Bofuri decks. I have played almost every shell in the set extensively, coming up on like 100 plus games with Bofuri at this point since release. And it's been a while in GP since this deck came out.
Right.
8 book is the best deck in Bofuri, and I don't think it's close.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the best deck in Bofuri, and it's not close. I don't think any other deck comes close to this. But like again, I'm a lot more of a conservative style of player. This fits directly into the kind of decks that I try to build and the kind of games that I try to play, which is like very hyper consistent, not a lot of one-ofs, very spice hate forward, anti-spice, just straight up do the thing, all one color, hyper consistent.
Yeah, I definitely build high on consistency too. I know Tyler and a lot of other people are still pretty high on the Neg-Soul when they play.
The problem,
I mean that just might be because it's the big shiny draw card of the set, and people want to try to make
exactly. Yeah, like decks like this fly under the radar because they are more vanilla, because they don't have those flashy quote unquote hit cards. Because like, the Neg-Soul is strong when you manage to get the choice into your hand every turn.
Right, exactly.
And the second you don't have the choice, that card's a 9K piece of garbage, you know? Like, and that's the big problem. And Milk Tea writes about that too. Again, I really want everybody to go and read Milk Tea's article, follow him, stay on top of the things he writes. He's an incredible player and an incredible writer. The fact that his explanations and stuff come through even on Google Translate is insane. So if you want to learn a lot more about this build and a lot more about the thought process that came into it, far beyond Brian and I rambling on for 30 minutes, definitely check out his article. He has stuff for Kaguya. He has stuff for every deck that he like investigates, every set that he investigates and then tops with, which is a lot of sets. He writes one of these breakdowns for, and they all read very well through Google Translate, even if you can't read Japanese. So definitely check that stuff out. But I think that's it for Bofuri. I think if people want to play Bofuri, this is the deck that you should be playing. I don't think it's close at all. Like I play, and before people come in and say, "Oh, the standby and the what is it, the horror maple or whatever that thing is,
the atrocity,
the atrocity maple." Like, yeah, I played all those decks too, and I've played more games with those than I've even played with this deck. And I can tell you without a doubt, 8-book Bofuri is like definitely the best deck I've played in this set. And like I said, it's not close. But yep, like we end all of our videos, definitely check out the Discords. Card Games and Competitive. We don't run or operate these Discords, but we are in them, and we do talk in there a lot. So if you want to talk about White Schwartz or maybe get some webcam games, check those out. Definitely join up. Very welcoming communities all around. And then we have the Facebook groups, White Schwartz Global and White Schwartz NA, depending on where you're located. Those have mostly buy, sell, trade stuff. So if you want to pick up Bofuri, pick up a playset or something like that, pick up all the cards at once, you can do that there. And as well, they have upcoming JP spoilers posted to Global. So definitely give that a look and join up on those groups. We also have our Twitters here at the bottom for all our recurring cast members, as well as, I don't have it on this specific slideshow, but Weissfight, weissfight.net. Type that into your browser, go there. If you want to try this deck before you buy, before it comes out in English, there are full translations for a ton of JP sets on Weiss Fight, you just grab the Encore Decks link from the description, which is down below, slam that in there, log into Weiss Fight. You don't got to install anything. You don't got to be on Steam. You're going to have any account or anything like that. You just go on there, type it in, type in that Encore Decks code, and just start playing. Just start trying out the deck, see how you like it. Really good resource. And there's also a Discord. You'll see that on the weissfight.net site. Give that a join if you have any constructive feedback for the website, because the developer is very responsive and implements everyone's feedback very, very quickly. So definitely give that a look if you're looking to make that simulator even better. It's pretty similar to Dueling Book, played Yu-Gi-Oh! Or anything like that. So definitely give that a look. But yeah, I think that's it. You got anything else to add, Brian?
I don't think so. That should be it.
All right, Pittsburgh White Schwartz signing off. We'll see you guys in the next one.
See ya.